attentively to what the president had to say in that opening remarks to the religious leaders. What's some of the biggest takeaways for you?
Well, Blaine, what is quite clear is that this part of the stakeholder meetings that the president needs to have is quite critical. And we heard the president say that he's open to any contribution or any word that he will get from these religious leaders that he's meeting with here this morning. So that meeting now is taking place behind closed doors. But of course, in those opening remarks that the media were allowed into, the president certainly commending some of the churches from coming forward by themselves to deal with the issue of social distancing, which the president mentioned, where some of them have mentioned that they're cancelling the Good Friday and the Easter Monday services. So the president are quite pleased with some of the action that some of the churches have taken. So also indicating that, South Africa is going through a very difficult time at the moment. You would know that South Africa's schools have also closed. The president alluding to the fact that it's very difficult in the sense that millions of our learners will be outside of school during this time. Some of them really rely on that for a nutritious meal and for a place of safety. But what South Africa certainly needs to do now is to ensure that it puts its people first, and the safety of all of South Africans is paramount at this point. So this discussion that will be taking place, Blaine, you'd recall that yesterday the president met with the opposition leaders. That was part of the stakeholder relations that he's having. The church now, of course, as we head towards the Good Friday and Easter Monday church services, most of the churches coming to the fore to say that they're going to partner with the government to ensure that whatever national plan there is to contain the spread of the coronavirus, they will hold hands with government to ensure that whatever plan is in place, they also play a part in ensuring that no further lives are put in danger. So a critical meeting that is taking place here, Blaine, and I think the religious leaders will also certainly not be quiet. They will certainly give their contributions and inputs in this particular meeting, and we'll certainly hear from some of those religious leaders and the president once that meeting has been concluded. The president also saying that he understands why the church would raise concerns during this time. I heard one say a bit earlier on this morning, how do you postpone prayer at such a critical time when the country does need prayer? So I would suggest that, these discussions that will take place will very much center around that. How do you balance between, prayer at such a critical time, not just for South Africa, but for the rest of the world? And how do you balance that with ensuring that no further lives are put in danger and that, South Africans in this particular case are kept safe? South Africa, of course, just a reminder, standing on confirmed cases of 116.
Yeah, Chriselda, the president was talking about the role that religious leaders can play in a lot of aspects when dealing with COVID-19. Yeah. One of them is, dealing with the issue of misinformation, the fake news, as we know it, and also, whereby you get this people who are infected are shunned by the community they live in. The president wants religious leaders to jump on board and try to, stem this and put paid to these issues.
Well, that's right, Blaine, and that's extremely powerful because you must remember, put all together with this religious denominations, they would obviously have congregants running into the thousands and millions. So the president calling on these religious leaders to use their platforms to, educate congregants about the coronavirus, about what is in the public domain. Use what the health department, the National Health Department, who is, of course, centralized in terms of communication about COVID-19. So a very important platform that certainly the country can use through the church to communicate messages about COVID-19 and also some of the stigmas associated with that. Fake news and the spread of disinformation, I always say, is one of the greatest challenges to journalism today. For these church leaders, are called by the president for these church leaders to use their platforms to deal with issues of fake news and disinformation and stigmas related to those who may have contracted the coronavirus at the moment. So a very important platform and extremely powerful for the churches during this time. whether some of those churches are you would recall that some of them have indicated some of the church services, the Sunday church services, will be streamed live on social media. That will be a great platform to use to spread the dangers of disinformation and to spread the correct message about COVID-19 and how South Africa and how everyone needs to come together to basically assist government in dealing with containing the spread of the coronavirus.
Yeah, no doubt religious leaders will be anxious, congregants will be anxious, the faithful in general will be anxious because there's still a lot of uncertainty. How long does this last for? And the president was talking about, it's understandable the anxiety that people are going through. Talk to us about some of the measures that religious leaders have put in place thus far in order to, adhere to what the president has said.
Well, Blaine, we've been monitoring this quite closely, and I know that over the past few days, a number of churches have sent out press releases basically saying that the Sunday services will be cancelled, and some of them will be streamed live on some of these social network platforms, so that you don't really get hundreds of congregants coming together as per the directive of the president. So some of them also saying that some of the ministers in some of these churches will then separate the congregants into groups of no more than 100. Social distancing is also very important in this instance. So the ministers in these churches, the leaders of these churches, will play quite a critical role in getting this message across. And, the cancellation of the Good Friday services as well as the Easter Monday services is quite critical, because if you're going to issue a directive that you cannot have more than 100 people who are gathering in one place at a time, the churches are going to play a very critical role in ensuring that that does happen, in particular as we head towards that very spiritual period of Good Friday and Easter Monday. So I think the president really relying on the church to come together and speak with one voice together with government on how they're going to deal with the issue of the coronavirus and ensure that there's no further spread of COVID-19.
Yeah, the cancellation of, I'm Catholic, Chriselda, as you know, and I think it's first time in my living memory that this has ever happened. What are the faithful saying with regards to the cancellation of services? I'm talking across the board in terms of religious events. Have you managed to talk to anyone in this regard?
Well, absolutely, Blaine. I think obviously, having to take into account the global impact that the coronavirus has, not just on South Africa, but the rest of the world. Congregants quite disappointed, of course, that at such a critical time of prayer, Good Friday and your Easter Monday, that they will not be able to converge and, as usual, use the power of prayer to get through some of the challenges that South Africa and the rest of the world is facing. But you know that earlier this week, we saw the Chief Justice, Mogoeng, who himself had called on South Africans to come together, not too many, on every Wednesday and a Sunday to pray. And, the sentiment is quite clear from the congregants that we have spoken to, who are saying that they quite understand what needs to happen now, that the church also needs to play a role in ensuring that they partner with government, including the Department of Health in South Africa, to ensure that there is no further spread of the coronavirus in this country. And how's that going to happen? The measures that have been put in place, the directives that were issued by President Cyril Ramaphosa, certainly seem to be in a direction in which the rest of the world is taking. Yeah. So South Africa is not unique in the plans that it's putting in place. So the congregants that we have spoken to quite understand, but there is that level of disappointment because heading towards Good Friday and Easter Monday, it's a good time for congregants to come together and pray.
Yeah, the president said on Sunday, Chriselda, never before in the history of our democracy has our country been confronted with such a severe situation, unprecedented in many regards. Chriselda, we've got to go, but thank you very much indeed. Good to have you on the story. Chriselda Lewis, live for us in Pretoria.